Violence flares mere days before Bangladesh's high-stakes general election. Clashes between rival supporters of the BNP and Jamaat-e-Islami leave dozens injured as Mohammad Yunus's interim government attempts to rush through a largely secretive deal with Washington during his final days in office. Cooperation with clauses. The US says it will monitor whether India continues to buy oil from Russia. As New Delhi says, the decision is totally up to companies and private refiners.
BRICS is not a threat to anyone or anything.
A block on the right side of history. Russia's deputy foreign minister gives an exclusive interview to RT India ahead of the BRICS Sherpa meeting in New Delhi, the first event of India's 2026 presidency. Hello and welcome. You're watching RT India. I'm Osama Shab, live from New Delhi. We have a packed bulletin ahead with major world developments, including our top story. Bangladesh has entered the last 24 hours of political campaigning ahead of its first election since Sheikh Hasina's government was overthrown in 2024. But there are security worries once again. On Friday, clashes broke out in Dhaka, with police confronting the protesters who were demanding justice for the late student activist Sharif Usman Hadi. He was shot and killed in an attack last December.
Campaigning is in the last phase for Bangladesh's first national election since 2024 uprising. The uprising ousted the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The campaigning ends officially at 7:30 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Major political parties are staging rallies in Dhaka and across the country ahead of February 12th vote, widely viewed as the most pivotal elections in Bangladeshi history. The campaigning has been marred by some sporadic violences. On Sunday, supporters of Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Jamaat-Islami clashed at Bauful area of Patuakhali districts. Dozens of people are injured reportedly, and additional forces have been deployed in the area to ensure peace.
We are committed to removing past controversies regarding the use of police in elections and delivering a meaningful, credible, and widely accepted vote to the nation.
With Sheikh Hasina's Awami League banned from the contest, the election is widely viewed as a two-party race between BNP and Jamaat-Islami alliance. Bangladesh Nationalist Party leads a 10-party coalition, while the Jamaat-Islami is heading a 11-party alliance. The Jamaat alliance includes the National Citizens Party, formed by the students who led the uprising in July 2024. The NCP, led by students leader Nahid Islam, is contesting 30 out of 300 parliamentary seats as part of the alliance with Jamaat. Outside of the two main alliance, Islami Andolan Bangladesh, who is split from Jamaat Islami bloc, and Jatiyo Party, a long ally with the Awami League, are running independently along a total of 50 parties. Over 12 crore voters are eligible to cast their votes for the next election and also give their mandate for a referendum on reform on the same day.
Meanwhile, ahead of the big vote, Dhaka and Washington, they are scheduled to sign off a new trade deal this Monday. In fact, this agreement, it will reportedly offset a trade imbalance specifically related to US tariffs on Bangladeshi exports. So what's on the table? Dhaka has pledged to boost imports of US wheat, energy, cotton and more. It will also see the Southeast Asian nation buy 25 Boeing aircraft, reduced from the initial proposal of 47. Other conditions reportedly involve cutting Chinese imports and upping purchases of US military equipment. And lastly, Bangladesh will be asked to largely accept US standards on import goods without certification and extra inspections, especially when it comes to the auto sector. But a shroud of doubt, it surrounds the deal, with critics claiming that it could be heavily swayed in America's favor. In fact, we'll try and decode that. Joining us now is Professor and economist Santosh Mehrotra. We'll try and get his take on that. Mr. Mehrotra, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. First of all, there are just 3 days left before the high-stakes elections in Bangladesh. Why would the Yunus government be rushing to finalize this particular trade deal with the United States? What is your understanding of that?
Since so little is known about this, and so little has been so far revealed, it seems to me quite clear that this is on account of political leverage that the United States government has always had on the president. The president came in after living in the United States in exile for the longest time. He was effectively flown in there and became president. And this is now payback time for the United States. It happened before Trump, but clearly it seems like it's payback time. So it's the usual US bullying of other countries. Including other countries in South Asia.
So you also spoke about how very little is known about this particular trade deal between US and Bangladesh. The entire secrecy behind this particular deal, what do you make of that? Because this agreement, it has been negotiated with very little public disclosure. What does it say about how the US and Bangladesh are trying to make a deal?
Well, for it to happen literally 3 days before the country goes to a national election, in which the current government people are not even participating as candidates, supposedly. I mean, this is suspect in the first place. This is a clear evidence of political leverage being utilized by the United States. And why would the current president of Bangladesh sign an agreement that is as broad-ranging as this, about defense equipment imports, about tariff rates? Some detail that has emerged suggests that the US has said that if a T-shirt that US imports contains 70% American cotton and yarn by value, US customs duties will exempt that portion from the 20% reciprocal tariff imposed on Bangladeshi goods last year. I mean, what is the meaning of all this? Currently, the US is not a major exporter of yarn or of raw cotton to Bangladesh.
So
most of the, may I just finish?
Yeah, please.
Most of the yarn and cotton is imported. That's how garments are exported. Garments account for 95% of Bangladesh's exports to the US. But what the US is seeming to press down on Bangladesh is buy our cotton, buy our yarn, and we will reduce the tariff.
Yeah.
Well, the government that takes over on Sunday after Sunday will have to take all these things into account.
Yeah. Another condition that this reportedly involves cutting Chinese imports and also upping purchases of US military equipment. Now, when it comes to Dhaka and their relationship with China, could this particular deal also affect Bangladesh's long-term trade relationship, particularly with China and other regional partners, according to you?
Inevitably, it will. There is no question about it. That I'll come to the defense imports in a second, but just going back to the trade and to the garments and cotton and yarn, most of the yarn comes from India. Now, does that mean that India is going to suffer in its exports of yarn to Bangladesh? Brazil is a major exporter. India is a major exporter of raw cotton to Bangladesh. all of these things are likely to be impacted. The defense imports, those are the ones which are most suspect, I believe, because there is no good reason for why an interim government, which is an unelected government, should be arriving at an agreement like this when a new government is supposed to come to power in 3 days' time after national elections. There is no legitimacy whatsoever, and we shouldn't be surprised if there are issues raised by a new government when it comes to power. It is likely to be a BNP government, Bangladesh National Party government. If it's it makes President Yunus will look very, very suspect on account of this.
All right, Professor Santosh Mehrotra, thank you very much for speaking with RT India and sharing your thoughts, sir. Uncle Sam is watching. As US-India trade talks gain momentum, Washington has said it will be keeping tabs on whether New Delhi continues to purchase Russian oil. It has put the spotlight on refiner giants like Nayara Energy as India underscores that the decision of where to buy lies completely with the companies. But it seems that threat remains.
If the Secretary of Commerce finds that India has resumed directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil, the Secretary of State, in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, shall recommend whether and to what extent I should take additional action as to India, including whether I should reimpose the additional ad valorem rate of duty of 25% on imports of articles of India.
Well, for more on this, we have RT India's Ridhima Kedia joining us here in the studio. Ridhima, what more can you tell us as far as this particular story is concerned? And more importantly, will the oil purchases from Russia, will it continue or will it stop completely?
You know, this is exactly where trade, geopolitics and energy supplies collide. The White House has been very clear that the US is going to keep a very close eye on India's purchase of Russian oil directly or indirectly. Now, Washington also says it can in fact review whether the 25% tariffs on India, which was imposed earlier, can now be reimposed. New Delhi, meanwhile, stays firm that commercial decisions are not for the government to make. In fact, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has reiterated that India is diversifying its energy sources and including purchases from the United States as well. But decision on commercial energy purchases are outside its purview. Take a look.
The buying of crude oil or LNG, LPG from the US is in India's own strategic interests as we diversify our oil sources. But the decisions are taken by the buyers, by the companies themselves. So the trade deal doesn't discuss who will buy what and from where.
You know, the India-US joint statement on trade, it didn't mention Russian oil specifically, but experts do think that oil is going to, make up a big part onto that $500 billion trade target that both the nations have set up, which, will be achievable in the coming future. Now, under the New Deal, India will cut or eliminate tariffs on US industrial goods and a wide range of agricultural products too. India's exports to the United States, like textiles, shoes, chemicals, machineries, aircraft parts, auto components, and also generic drugs could potentially rise. But oil imports from the United States may form a significant chunk since, India's energy demands are increasing and India is very much open to diversifying its energy sources now. But there are also expectations that some of Russian, energy is going to keep flowing into the country despite US pressure. And, for example, Nayara Energy's Gujarat plant, for instance, that, has been refining Russian crude for a really, really long while now. But you remember that the refinery is almost entirely dependent on Russian supplies. So it may not be in the position to really end the purchase of Russian oil. Now, how will India balance this to keep, energy supply steady and secure remains to be seen.
What is also quite interesting are the numbers, the data, because India's imports of the Russian crude, it has surged sharply since 2021, isn't it?
Of course, it has. Back then, it made up to less than 1% of India's imports. But in 2024, everything's changed. Imports peaked with Russia accounting for nearly 40% of India's oil basket. And not just that, in 2024, in fact, Russia became and remained India's top crude supplier, crossing 2 million barrels per day. In total, since 2022, India has spent more than 205 billion euro on Russian fossil fuels imports. So I think the number speaks volumes about the kind of history in the partnership both the countries have had, and that's what I got to say.
Absolutely. Rhythm Arcadia, thank you very much for getting us all those details.
Well, thank you.
Meanwhile, we are also joined by Mr. Sumit Ritolia. He's the lead research analyst at Kepler for some insight on this particular story. Mr. Ritolia, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. Firstly, how do you see this entire situation at this moment? Is the United States, is it using these trade talks to quietly enforce its own foreign policy, especially on a country like India? Because if that is the case, then what should be India's response?
I think what Ridhima said, I think we'll go by that. Like Indian government has also notified that as of now, whatever the document you guys were showing that the tariff might get reimposed, but we need to follow what the government of India has been equivocally saying that they will keep on diversifying and look forward the need of 1.4 billion people rather than going directly by whatever the US has been saying. And again, going forward, like Indian refiners don't buy anything from Iran, crude oil, because it's a sanctioned entity, and it's Indian government policy that we will follow the same. But as of now, since last year, August, we have been seeing the pressure increased on Indian government by US and EU. But as of now, still, I think it's holding back. And though we have seen that volumes have declined a bit, I will not say a bit, we have seen a majority drop. Like we were importing, the near highs was around 1.8 million barrels per day. As of now, January is just around 1.7 million barrels per day. So we have seen a reduction of 40% still, but I don't see a near-term halt of crude oil imports from Russia, though India will keep on diversifying the barrels.
You know, we have been highlighting the data that Kepler has provided. In fact, a lot of that oil is actually legally available. So the question at this point is, why should Indian refiners then go on to pay more when cheaper oil is legally available?
Yeah, like still Russian oil is not sanctioned. And let's talk on data, and like whatever Indian refiners are buying, apart from Naira, like even Naira is buying majority of these cargoes from non-sanctioned legal entities. So, and again, like I will again reiterate about what government of India policy has been. It's stand by diversifying its oil, catering to India's need, and also from the Kepler's point of view, we have seen reduction. Like one of our note published on 3rd of February, we see near-term imports around 1.1 million barrels per day of Russian refineries till early Q2, because see, trade deals in terms of crude happens around 6 to 8 weeks before any crude parcel has to arrive in any of the refineries. So it's not like plug, switch and off scheme. You cannot cut off the supply overnight. It takes time, 4 to 6 months. So near time, we see increased diversification and Russian oil imports to flow, because we are actually in a situation, it's more about balance rather than barrels for now. So yeah, Russian volumes is expected to flow unless there is a strict policy guidance from government of India that we will not be buying Russian barrels. That is very unlikely given what the geopolitics we are at the center of the stage. Yeah. But yeah.
You know, what also doesn't really surprise me, Mr. Ritolia, is the fact that much of this rules-based order, it apply only when the United States writes these rules. Because what you are essentially doing is literally putting a country like India under quote-unquote surveillance. The question is, can strategic partners then publicly pressure each other without damaging the trust?
Okay. It's a good point, but yeah, at the end of the day, see, India's import around 85 to 90% of its crude oil. So it needs an upper hand, and with you cannot say like you need to buy from this or that. So, and India has been diversifying its crude oil barrels since importing crude oil barrels since long, and like from last 2-3 years, and Indian refiners have pressed up buying from Canada, Brazil, even Cuba, even Argentina, deep in Western African countries, and I see that continue to happen.
Yeah, hypothetically, if at all India actually bends today on oil, what is the next red line tomorrow, according to you? Is it agriculture? Is it dairy? Just trying to understand that.
I will not be able to comment on that, to be honest. But again, like our view is that Russian oil barrel is expected to continue to flow, given we might not reach the volumes we have seen in 2024.
But do you agree that it will continue to flow?
Yeah, near term, there is no doubt like it will not be flowing.
Okay.
Because data speaks itself, so yeah.
Mr. Ritolia, is the United States, do you feel that it is underestimating India's domestic political compulsions on fuel prices? Do you think that is also the case?
Again, like if you look at since 2022, like the peak of Russia-Ukraine war situation, like when the global barrel crude oil prices were skyrocketing, but Indian refiners were shielded by cheaper Russian barrels, and like the prices domestically here didn't shoot up, and like that was one of the reasons why Russian barrels still today, like though we have decreased, it still remains one of the top suppliers. So
yeah,
so cheaper barrels do protect Indian refiner margins, and also more than that, like it arrests the inflation that is expected to come, like when you buy costlier barrels, and then it has to be passed into the different customers.
Mr. Ritolia, a final word from you. Should India accept the higher costs just to keep Washington comfortable? And more importantly, does India have a choice?
Again, see, it depends on refineries to refineries. And as what the commercial minister also said, the purchase decisions are different based on each refinery configurations and all. But as of now, based on our analysis, we still see Russian crude as one of the most economical foreign situation. But again, you need to look at like we still buy 85 to 90% of the barrels. So there are at times where geopolitics and trade relations do come into your sourcing strategies. But again, we see near-term Russian oil will continue to flow, but not at that length like what we used to see at peak.
All right, Mr. Sumit Ritolia, thank you very much for speaking with RT India.
Thank you.
And BRICS season opens in India with the first meeting under India's presidency this year taking place in the capital. New Delhi will host the BRICS Sherpa meeting, with the bloc becoming an increasingly influential player in the multipolar world order. RT's Vinayak Dikshit, he spoke to the Deputy Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov, ahead of this particular summit. Take a listen.
Indian team is very capable, highly professional. All the compliments. We commend the program. We commend concepts and ideas that they have presented. Even the very way how they translated the acronym BRICS speaks for itself. Building resilience, innovation, cooperation, and sustainability is an amazing Indian way to put in a nutshell what we want to deliver. Having said that, I will also tell you that this very fluid and in many ways unpredictable, highly challenging international environment requires that BRICS speaks with one voice as much as possible, stays strong, defends multilateralism, defends international law, and also adds value to what many people believe are necessary and even mandatory changes in international economic and financial system. This is where BRICS really may have a difference. And BRICS as an attractive force internationally also, I think, will develop this role during Indian chairship. And the presence of BRICS partner countries at the first Sherpa meeting is a great exhibition of their keen interest to come closer to BRICS. BRICS is a very open formation. It doesn't have any hidden agendas. We work at BRICS for many years. This year, BRICS will turn 20. This is quite an age for a structure. We have all the reasons to believe that when Indian chairship is over, we will conclude that it was yet another year of BRICS successes. Very few countries in the world can stay equal to India in terms of how much India has delivered to humanity in so many fields. Culture, philosophy, innovation, the very ways how Indians believe into human beings, and it's important. And the humanity-centered approach is, among other things, a label for this year Indian chairship. We are on the verge of establishing true multipolarity, where there is no place for dictation, no place for hegemonism. What we see elsewhere for the time being is something that will not sustain, in my view. BRICS is not a threat to anyone or anything. BRICS is always pro and never contra.
So we are outside the venue of the BRICS Sherpas meet, the first that is happening ever since India has taken over the presidency of this key multinational forum. Now, the timing of this event happens to be very crucial because geopolitics in recent times has been dominated by President Donald Trump and his tariffs. President Trump's tariffs have significantly shaken up the global rules-based world order, bringing focus upon organizations like that of the BRICS. Now, New Delhi here is also walking the diplomatic tightrope. On the one hand, it is inking trade deals with the likes of the United States of America and other nations, while on the other, it is also heading international groupings like that of the BRICS, which have members like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Other members who became members of the BRICS after the year 2024 include Ethiopia, Egypt, UAE, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Now, with a 26% share in the world's nominal GDP and a combined population of almost 3.5 billion people, the BRICS happens to be an organization with significant sway. Now, this is how Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, has described the rise of the BRICS.
Growth rates and GDP PPP volumes of BRICS countries have substantially exceeded the combined GDP of the G7. The United States, which for many years was the engine of the world economy, the regulator of world finance, used the role of the dollar to strengthen its dominant position. They are objectively losing their economic influence, their weight in the world economy. At the same time, countries such as the People's Republic of China, India, and Brazil are rising.
Now, with India already emerging as the collective voice of the global South, Sherpas here are expected to go over the details of their engagements, which are supposed to happen ahead in the future. Meanwhile, India is also working on the theme of building resilience, cooperation, and sustainability in global matters. Now, with President Trump openly campaigning against the BRICS, calling it a threat to the dollar, it remains to be seen how India will steer forward the discourse of this key multinational forum ahead in the future.
The Epstein files fallout is piling pressure on British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He has seen 2 top aides quit in as many days, the latest being his Director of Communications, Tim Allen. His resignation followed hot on the heels of Morgan McSweeney, the Downing Street Chief of Staff, stepping away over his role in the appointment of the former US Ambassador, Peter Mandelson. He gave this statement.
The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country, and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice.
The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he has been facing a political storm over what he knew about Mandelson's Epstein links, especially before appointing him as the United States ambassador. The newly published documents, it also alleges that Mandelson shared sensitive information with the late billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Before the dominoes started falling, Starmer said that the matter was out of his hands and with Parliament and the police. Reports have claimed that the Prime Minister, he won't resign over this entire matter. Those are the latest developments this hour on RT India. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.